So picture this scene, right? Because the contrast here is just, well, it's absolutely staggering.
Oh, it really is. It's almost hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah. So it's just a few months ago. You were sitting in this dimly lit, incredibly opulent cigar lounge in Bucharest.
Right, over in Romania.
Exactly. And the air in this room is just thick with smoke. It smells like expensive leather. And there is this overwhelming, palpable sense of invincibility.
You can just feel the arrogance in the room.
Completely. And sitting right across from an investigative journalist is Andrew Tate.
Huh?
He is leaning back, totally relaxed, projecting this aura of a man who basically owns the world.
Right.
And he looks this reporter dead in the eye and brags with absolute conviction that there is a 0% chance he will ever face trial.
0%. I mean, he actually said that.
0. This is a man who genuinely believes he has outmaneuvered the entire global justice system.
Yeah.
He feels completely untouchable.
Yeah, he really did. But things change fast.
They really do. Fast forward to the present day, the cigar smoke is cleared. The Bucharest lounge is gone.
And reality hits.
Hard. That same man, along with his brother Tristan, is suddenly sitting in a Miami jail cell, arrested. He's facing this staggering mountain of international charges and just watching his carefully constructed empire completely implode in real time.
It is genuinely one of the most, whiplash-inducing reversals of fortune we have seen in recent memory.
Oh, absolutely.
And the sheer speed of that collapse, going from this untouchable geopolitical influencer, a guy flying private jets around the world,
To an inmate wearing a jumpsuit awaiting international extradition.
Exactly. That transition is what makes this entire situation so incredibly compelling to unpack because, well, it didn't just happen by accident.
No, not at all.
It's the result of this meticulously built collision between his digital illusion and physical law enforcement.
And that collision is exactly our mission today, so welcome to the deep dive.
I'm glad to be here.
We are taking you straight into the heart of a sprawling, frankly explosive investigation today. We are pulling our facts from a recent, incredibly detailed broadcast by Democracy Now!
Right, which featured some really heavy-hitting reporting.
It did. It featured the New Yorker investigative journalist Heidi Blake. Her investigation is chillingly titled Empire of Abuse.
It's a fitting title, honestly, once you see the scope of it.
It really is. It's a piece of reporting that spans thousands of leaked files, scores of interviews, and a timeline of alleged crimes stretching back well over a decade.
But before we get into those details, we really need to set some ground rules for this deep dive.
Yes, absolutely. We have to navigate very carefully here because the New Yorker reporting touches on major political figures across the entire spectrum.
Right. It involves highly prominent figures from both left-wing and right-wing political spheres.
Exactly, as well as current political administrations. So, listener, we must explicitly state this right up front. Our job today isn't to play political pundit or take a side.
No, not at all. We are just here to follow the forensic paper trail that Heidi Blake laid out and basically see where the data leads.
Right. We are absolutely not endorsing any political viewpoints, and we certainly aren't making moral judgments on the politicians mentioned.
I mean, our sole purpose here is to impartially report, analyze, and just synthesize the facts, the timelines, and the allegations exactly as they were presented in this source material.
Exactly. That is a crucial distinction.
It is, because to understand the mechanics of this story, you really have to strip away the political noise. You have to look at the structural reality of what is actually being alleged here.
Yeah, and for the few people who might have somehow managed to avoid their massive digital footprint, we need to quickly establish exactly who Andrew and Tristan Tate are.
Right, the basics. They are dual British-U.S. citizens, first of all.
They started out as kickboxers, then transitioned into reality TV contestants in the UK.
Though that's basically ancient history at this point.
Yeah, totally. More importantly, for today, they are the defining, undisputed figures of a hyper-masculine online community that is known as the Manosphere.
They built this totally unprecedented online following over the last few years.
They really did. And right now, today, they are facing a combined total of 59 charges of rape and human trafficking across multiple countries.
59 charges. I mean, just let that number sink in.
It's massive. And to understand the sheer gravity of that number, you really have to understand the illusion of impunity that they had successfully maintained for years.
Up until this Miami arrest, the Tates were operating under the fundamental assumption that they had beaten the system.
Completely. They were previously living in Romania, where prosecutors had actually filed a criminal indictment against them back in 2023.
Right, and that was for violence, rape, and human trafficking.
But from the outside, And certainly from Tate's perspective, that Romanian case had seemingly stalled out.
Yeah, it just kind of dragged on. They even had their travel restrictions lifted, which, by the way, is a fascinating mechanical detail we're going to tear into later.
Oh, we definitely are. So they were freely flying to Hong Kong, the Bahamas, Turkey, Kazakhstan, and of course the United States.
They were basically operating on the belief that the worst was behind them. The geopolitical weather had cleared, so to speak.
Right. In that Bucharest cigar lounge, Andrew Tate actually told Heidi Blake that the Romanian case was just, and this is a quote, garbage out of a corrupt country.
Wow. The audacity.
I know, right? He was literally demanding, show me a victim, show me a hurt girl, show me a bruise. The bravado was just absolute.
Well, he felt that his wealth, his fame, and his location had immunized him against any real consequences.
But the reality of international law, as we see, is that the landscape can shift overnight.
It really can. And it wasn't the Romanian authorities that finally shattered that aura of invincibility. It was the British authorities.
It's exactly. The UK's Crown Prosecution Service suddenly stepped out of the shadows and authorized 38 entirely new charges against Andrew and Tristan.
And that completely changes the architecture of this entire legal battle.
It changes it because of the sheer scope. That number 38 new charges is a massive escalation.
Yeah, this wasn't just like a minor administrative update to the existing Romanian case.
No, British authorities issued a formal extradition request based on these new charges, bringing the total up to 59.
And what's crucial to understand here is the time frame of these new charges.
Let's get into that.
These new charges relate to 7 different victims spanning a very specific, sustained period from 2010 to 2017.
Wait, let me pause you there because that time frame is highly significant. We are talking about a 7-year span of alleged activity before he even moved to Romania.
Exactly.
This was before the absolute peak of his internet fame.
Right. This is not a single isolated incident being relitigated. This is the UK authorities alleging a deeply entrenched, multi-year pattern of severe criminal behavior that heavily predates his current public persona.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The geography of this legal move is just as important as the numbers.
Yeah, because for years, the Tates had centered their operations in Romania.
As Heidi Blake's reporting highlights, Andrew Tate would regularly brag to his associates that he had cultivated deep police and mafia connections in Romania.
He truly believed those connections essentially placed him above the law.
Right. Whether that was actually true or whether it was just the inflated bravado of a narcissist, the important point is that he felt he had home court advantage there.
He understood the levers of power in Bucharest. He knew how the local system worked, or, at least how to manipulate it.
I see. So by issuing an extradition request through the UK and coordinating with the US legal systems, the British authorities essentially bypassed that entire Romanian stalemate.
Precisely. They took the fight out of the arena where Tate felt he had total control.
And they dropped it into a highly formalized, heavily resourced international extradition process involving the US State Department and the Department of Justice.
Yeah. He thought he was navigating this localized, malleable maze in Eastern Europe, and suddenly, boom, he found himself locked into the rigid grid of a global extradition treaty.
That is the perfect way to look at it. The extradition treaty between the UK and the US is incredibly robust, It's highly mechanical.
Right, it doesn't care about your local influence in Bucharest, it cares about evidentiary thresholds.
Exactly. The UK Crown Prosecution Service doesn't bring 38 charges of this magnitude unless they believe they have a structurally sound, heavily corroborated case.
Which brings us to probably the most pressing question of this whole deep dive.
How did a guy who was just a contestant on the UK version of the reality show Big Brother manage to build an operation vast enough to require the intervention of multiple international governments?
It's wild to think about that origin story, but to understand it, we have to pull apart the business model of this empire of abuse. We have to look at the actual mechanics.
Yeah. Heidi Blake's timeline starts us back in the UK in 2014. And the origin point detailed in this source material is incredibly dark.
It really is. It began with the recruitment of a Slovakian teenager who was moved to the UK to stage webcam sex shows when she was still a minor.
That is basically the foundation of the empire. And the geographical shift happens very quickly after that, right?
Yeah. In 2015, Tate hastily fled the UK and relocated to Romania.
And the reporting makes it clear this wasn't, just a lifestyle choice or looking for cheaper rent. It was a strategic retreat.
Right. He relocated because he had just been accused of rape by 3 different women in Britain.
So Romania was chosen as a jurisdiction where he felt he could operate with much less scrutiny, where the legal system might be slower or just more susceptible to his influence.
What's fascinating here is what he did once he arrived. He didn't just continue his webcam business, he completely industrialized it.
I really want to dig into that concept of an industrial operation, because when people hear webcam business, they might picture something decentralized, maybe casual.
Right, perhaps exploitative, but still somewhat ad hoc.
Exactly. But the methodology detailed in these leaked files is just staggering. It reads like a corporate manual for human trafficking.
It really does. The reporting describes how Tate systematically trolled social media for new recruits, specifically and deliberately targeting teenage girls who showed signs of vulnerability.
It was essentially an assembly line of exploitation.
And the leech files are extensive. I mean, we are talking about hundreds of thousands of private messages, internal documents, audio recordings.
And they reveal this horrifying level of psychological and physical control. The source material outlines how Tate actually referred to his workers as slaves,
He literally branded them with tattoos to mark his ownership.
which is just beyond disturbing. And the physical violence used to enforce compliance was harrowing.
But from an operational standpoint, perhaps the most insidious part of the whole enterprise was the psychological entrapment.
You mean the way he built the system, completely designed to insulate himself from prosecution?
Exactly. You're talking about the blackmail. This part of the investigation is truly chilling.
The files reveal that Tate would compel his alleged victims to record videos defending him.
Right. He would force them to look straight into a camera and say that they were there willingly, that they loved him, that he had never hurt them.
It sounds like he wasn't just running a business. He was running a cult where the product was human suffering.
That's a very accurate analogy. So he's not just abusing them, he's forcing them to manufacture his own legal cover.
Right. It's a mechanism of preemptive defense. Think about the strategic value of that from a criminal perspective.
Oh, it's devious. If one of these women ever managed to escape, if she somehow managed to overcome the psychological trauma and go to the local authorities.
He immediately possessed a high-definition video of her stating the exact opposite.
Exactly. It creates this impenetrable wall of evidentiary noise for any investigator trying to unravel the truth.
A local detective looks at a bruised woman making an accusation, and then looks at a video from a month prior of that same woman smiling and saying she is a willing participant.
It creates immediate doubt. It paralyzes the investigation.
But surely, if a victim explains that the video was made under duress, under threat of violence, investigators can see through that, right? I mean, how does someone operate this in the open for a decade?
Well, because the reporting mentions he didn't just rely on blackmail videos, he went on the offensive.
Right. He orchestrated smear campaigns. He even sued victims and their families in Florida.
That is precisely how you maintain the ecosystem of silence. You weaponize the legal system against the very people who are trying to expose you.
By filing SLAPP suits, right? Strategic lawsuits against public participation.
Yes. By filing those in places like Florida, he forced his victims to defend themselves in incredibly costly, emotionally draining legal battles.
And a SLAPP suit isn't actually designed to win on legal merit, is it?
No, it is designed to bankrupt and exhaust the defendant.
Imagine you are a survivor of severe trauma. You finally get the courage to speak out, and suddenly you are hit with a multi-million-dollar defamation lawsuit in a foreign jurisdiction.
You have to hire lawyers, sit for depositions, and constantly relive your trauma, all while facing financial ruin.
It's a closed loop of control. You have the physical violence and branding to ensure immediate compliance.
You have the forced blackmail videos to destroy their credibility if they speak to police.
And you have aggressive, well-funded litigation to financially ruin anyone who still tries to come forward or go to the press.
He also allegedly bribed individuals to stay silent. I mean, it is a highly sophisticated, multi-layered defense mechanism.
And for a very long time, that closed loop worked flawlessly. It kept the authorities at bay. It allowed him to scale the operation.
But as we look at the trajectory of this investigation, we have to examine the specific evidence that finally broke through that wall of silence.
Right, because no matter how sophisticated the psychological manipulation is, physical trauma leaves an undeniable record.
It does. And this brings us to a crucial part of the deep dive.
Listener, I need to give a brief clinical warning here. This next section involves specific, graphic medical descriptions of extreme violence.
We are not sharing this for shock value, though. It is absolutely necessary to understand the forensic foundation of these new charges.
Exactly. It explains why the UK government felt confident enough to demand extradition.
The turning point for investigative journalist Heidi Blake, and arguably for the prosecutors who eventually took up these cases, was identifying a unifying forensic clue.
Because when you are dealing with a charismatic abuser who has a mountain of money, an army of lawyers, and a library of coerced defense videos, cases almost inevitably devolve into a he said, she said dynamic.
Right. And that dynamic is notoriously difficult to prosecute, especially across international borders.
What breaks that dynamic is physical, undeniable, structural medical patterning.
And that pattern came down to a single, highly specific medical term, petechiae.
The reporting highlights that multiple women across the span of a decade, women who did not know each other,
Women who lived in completely different countries, who had never communicated.
all reported the exact same physical aftermath the morning after they were assaulted by Tate. They woke up with pinprick blood spots in their eyes.
Petechia. Specifically, conjunctival petechia.
It is crucial to understand the forensic significance of this detail because it is essentially the linchpin of the structural evidence.
Yeah, petechia occurs when the tiny capillaries in the eye burst due to a sudden acute spike in pressure inside the head.
And in forensic medicine, this is not just a general sign of a struggle, is it?
No, absolutely not. It is considered a hallmark, almost exclusive sign of extreme strangulation.
Wow. Meaning the neck was compressed so severely and for so long that venous blood could not drain from the head back into the body.
Exactly, causing the delicate vessels in the eyes to literally rupture under the immense pressure.
So if we look at this from a prosecutorial standpoint, this changes the entire landscape of the case.
Completely. You have a woman in the UK in 2014 reporting this specific symptom.
And then you have another woman in Los Angeles years later reporting the exact same symptom.
They have never met, they haven't coordinated their stories.
But they both describe the exact same rare medical symptom, and they both describe the exact same highly specific modus operandi.
Right, being violently choked until they pass out or can't breathe, and often being beaten over the head during the assault.
If one person claims they were strangled, a defense attorney can argue they are lying or exaggerating, or that the marks were consensual.
But when half a dozen unconnected women across 10 years describe the exact same highly specific, anatomically accurate forensic outcome, petechiae, the mathematical probability of that being a coordinated lie drops to near zero.
It moves the evidence from anecdotal testimony to undeniable structural fact.
Exactly. A prosecutor doesn't just have a story anymore, they have a forensic signature.
And what makes this even more devastating for Tate's defense is that this physical patterning was heavily corroborated by his own audio recordings.
The audio reference in the source material is just horrifying.
The broadcast played a clip from a 2013 BBC account of a woman they identified as Anna.
Right. She described dating Tate briefly, going home with him, and sitting on the couch.
And out of the blue, without any provocation or argument, he just stares at the ceiling and says, calmly, I'm just debating whether I should rape you or not.
And then he violently strangles her.
Furthermore, there is leaked audio referenced in the reporting where Tate is actually boasting about his methods to others.
Yeah, he is recorded saying things like, bang out the machete boom in her face and grip her up by the neck.
Which just speaks to the overwhelming narcissism of the operation.
He felt so protected by his ecosystem of silence that he was entirely comfortable recording himself articulating his own crimes.
And this is where the value of long-term investigative journalism becomes so incredibly apparent to the listener.
Heidi Blake spent 9 months digging into hundreds of thousands of files.
Because local authorities operating in silos in different jurisdictions, a beat cop in London, a detective in Florida might look at one individual police report from 2014 and dismiss it.
Right, due to a lack of immediate corroboration or the presence of one of those confusing blackmail videos. They just see a fragment.
But a journalist zooming out, looking at the entire decade from a macro perspective, finds the hidden thread.
They see the petechia, they see the specific phrasing of the threats, they see the machete intimidation.
They weave those isolated incidents into an undeniable pattern of behavior that authorities eventually can no longer ignore.
It's an incredible piece of synthesis.
Yeah.
But it leaves us with a massive, glaring paradox that I think a lot of people struggle to wrap their heads around.
Okay, let's unpack this. If the crimes were this brutal, this systematic, and documented by this much forensic patterning and audio evidence, how on earth did Andrew Tate become one of the most famous, wealthy, and celebrated men on the planet.
Right, because he didn't hide in the shadows like a traditional criminal. He became a global celebrity.
He was literally the most Googled man on Earth at one point.
And the answer, according to the reporting, is that he wrapped his criminality in a highly marketable, highly profitable political ideology.
He essentially monetized the Manosphere.
He built what we can accurately describe as an ideological shield.
So what was his pitch? Tate's core philosophy, the pitch that he broadcasted relentlessly to millions of alienated young men, was this meticulously crafted narrative of victimization and entitlement.
He told these young men that society had become feminized, that the system was rigged against them, that they as men were the true victims of the modern world.
And he offered a solution. He said, you must reclaim your natural masculine imperative for power.
This is a perfect place for an analogy, because the psychological mechanism here functions exactly like a Trojan horse.
Think about a 15-year-old kid scrolling on his phone in his bedroom. He's lonely. Maybe he's insecure about his body or his lack of money or his inability to talk to girls.
He feels invisible.
Suddenly, the algorithm feeds him a video of a guy with a Bugatti, custom suit, and a cigar saying, I see you. I know why you're hurting.
Right, I can teach you how to get fit, I can teach you how to get rich, I can teach you how to be confident and respected.
That is the wooden horse. It looks like self-help. It looks like empowerment. It looks like a lifeline.
But hidden inside that horse, smuggled into that kid's brain through sheer algorithmic repetition, is the normalization of severe misogyny.
And ultimately, it normalizes sexual violence. The reporting explicitly notes that Tate's version of a masculine imperative often equated directly to physical domination and sexual violence.
The Trojan horse analogy is highly accurate because the payload is hidden beneath the promise of self-improvement.
And that Trojan horse was incredibly lucrative, not just for Tate, who amassed a massive fortune selling access to his online universities and private groups, but for the digital platforms that hosted him.
Yeah, the architecture of the attention economy is designed to reward engagement above all else.
And anger, resentment, and extreme polarization are the absolute highest drivers of engagement.
So after Tate was finally ejected from mainstream social media platforms like YouTube and Instagram for his violently misogynistic views, he didn't disappear.
No. The market simply adjusted. He was absorbed by alternative platforms that actively monetize grievance.
The Democracy Now! Broadcast specifically highlights his move to the right-wing streaming platform, Rumble.
This wasn't just a guy setting up a new free account. Rumble, which had just received major investments from high-profile figures like billionaire Peter Thiel and J.D. Vance, gave Andrew Tate a massive $6 million contract.
They paid him to bring his audience over to their platform. Let's just pause on the sheer magnitude of that. $6 million.
This is a contract offered to a man who, at the time, had already been raided by police in Romania for alleged human trafficking.
The allegations were completely public, the controversies were known.
Yet the financial incentive overrode the reputational risk.
And the source material provides a staggering data point that explains exactly why this happens in the tech industry.
When Tate moved his streaming operation to Rumble, it caused a 45% spike in their active user base.
45%. I mean, that kind of growth in the tech sector is practically mythical.
It propelled the Rumble app straight to the top of the Google and Apple download charts. One single influencer drove a 45% growth in active users.
This raises an important question, perhaps the most cynical question of the entire digital age, which the investigative reporting forces us to confront.
Yet, did the executives at these tech platforms and these high-level investors actively look the other way on the very public, very serious allegations of human trafficking and abuse simply because the audience metrics were too profitable to ignore?
When a creator can deliver a 45% spike in active users, does the platform essentially become a willing partner in their laundering?
It is a stark example of how the attention economy can essentially underwrite, validate, and finance an alleged criminal enterprise. The metrics provided the shield.
But the truly terrifying part of this investigation is that the shield didn't stop at tech platforms and digital metrics.
No, it didn't. This massive, highly mobilized, deeply loyal audience of young men didn't just buy Rumble subscriptions or enroll in Tate's online courses. They essentially bought Tate political influence at the highest levels of the United States government.
He transformed from an internet provocateur into a recognized political operative.
And again, listener, we must reiterate our strict impartiality here. We are tracing the factual timeline exactly as reported by The New Yorker and Democracy Now!
Right, we're just analyzing the mechanics of audience capture. The timeline of this political cultivation is fascinating, and it goes back much further than most people realize.
It actually dates back to 2017. Andrew Tate, leaning heavily into pro-MAGA content online, managed to secure an in-person meeting with Donald Trump Jr. at Trump Tower in New York.
They establish a personal relationship that, according to the reporting, continued for years.
He also, through an intermediary, cultivated a relationship with Barron Trump.
The reporting notes that Tate pledged his support to Barron, who was widely seen as instrumental in mobilizing that exact demographic young, extremely online male voters for his father's 2024 re-election campaign.
So Tate positioned himself as a key node, a vital bridge, in reaching an audience that traditional political campaigns often really struggle to engage.
Because he was the defining figure of the Manosphere, his masculinist ideology became a highly useful tool for holding together certain coalitions of young, disaffected male voters.
In the modern political landscape, attention is the most valuable currency. Tate controlled a massive reservoir of attention.
And because of that perceived political utility, he gained an astonishing array of mainstream media defenders who provided public cover for him, even as the criminal charges, the raids, and the arrests mounted in Europe.
Let's examine the mechanics of how these media defenders operated, because it is frankly surreal to hear the list provided in the source material.
First, you have Tucker Carlson. After the initial raid on Tate's compound in Romania in 2022, which, by the way, was sparked by reports of a captive U.S. citizen on the premises, Carlson hosted Tate on Fox News.
But he didn't interrogate him about the raid, did he?
No. He framed Tate as a free speech martyr, a victim of a coordinated campaign to silence independent voices.
Later, after Tate was actually detained by organized crime prosecutors in Romania, Carlson traveled there and did a 2.5-hour fawning interview.
According to Heidi Blake's analysis, Carlson essentially declared Tate innocent on air and allowed him to lie extensively without any pushback about the evidence against him.
What you are seeing there is the pure mechanics of audience capture.
Exactly. A traditional pundit like Carlson sees the massive, highly engaged audience Tate commands and realizes that by defending Tate, he can absorb some of that audience loyalty for himself.
It is a transactional relationship disguised as ideological solidarity.
Then you have Elon Musk. After Musk took over Twitter and rebranded it as X, one of his high-profile moves was to reinstate Andrew Tate's previously banned account.
In an instant, Musk handed Tate back a global megaphone with 11 million followers.
But the defense went beyond platform access. The reporting notes that Musk has continually dismissed the criminal charges against the Tates.
He has bizarrely argued online that the prosecution of the Tates is a distraction from, quote, real sex trafficking.
Which is a distinction that completely ignores the voluminous forensic evidence, the leaked audio, and the years of investigative reporting in the Tate case.
The list continues. You have Candace Owens, who the reporting states dedicated hours of airtime not just to defending Tate's character, but to actively attacking and smearing his victims.
She amplified the legal and public relations warfare the Tates were already waging, casting serious doubt on the women's motives and character.
And J.D. Vance, the current vice president, who had invested heavily in Rumble, the very platform that gave Tate the $6 million contract, and who continued to follow the Tates on X even after the recent election results.
The overarching dynamic here is profound, and it illustrates a deeply disturbing reality about modern media.
You have a man accused of horrific physical violence, psychological torture, and human trafficking. And he isn't hiding in the shadows. He isn't a pariah.
He is being publicly championed by mainstream billionaires, top-tier political pundits, and individuals in the immediate orbit of the White House.
This level of validation creates a reality distortion field for the listener. For the millions of young men watching, it signals that the allegations must be false because powerful people are standing by him.
And critically, it sends a message to international prosecutors. It signals that going after Andrew Tate means going after a highly protected political asset with friends in very high places.
Which brings us to the absolute apex of this story, the most staggering display of that political protection. The travel ban.
Because having pundits defend you on X or securing a massive contract on Rumble is one thing, right? It's digital air cover. It controls the narrative.
But how did Andrew Tate actually get his physical passport back from the Romanian authorities? He was under a strict judicial travel ban.
Right. How did he legally board a private jet to fly to Florida?
The reporting reveals it wasn't a triumph of legal argumentation in a courtroom. It was a direct geopolitical intervention.
This is where the concept of soft power translates into hard reality. According to the broadcast, the intervention happened at the highest levels of international diplomacy, the Munich Security Conference.
Richard Grenell, the U.S. Special Envoy, had a conversation with Romania's foreign minister. And during this high-level diplomatic meeting, Grenell raised the issue of the Tate brothers.
Now, to be absolutely fair to the source material, we need to note that Grenell denied that this was a form of pressure. He claimed it was merely an inquiry.
But the investigative reporting found a former senior insider from the Tate camp who confirmed that the Tate campaign team had specifically orchestrated this exact maneuver.
They had explicitly asked Grenell to raise the issue with the Romanians.
And regardless of how Grenell categorizes the conversation, the immediate fallout is the definition of diplomatic capitulation.
Shortly after Grenell spoke to the foreign minister, Romanian prosecutors, the very people who had indicted Tate, literally reached out to the Tate's defense lawyers.
And they asked point blank, what do the Americans want from us?
The lawyers replied that they wanted the travel ban lifted, and almost immediately the Romanian justice system folded. The brothers were given their passports back.
That is just astonishing.
Oh.
A simple inquiry from a U.S. envoy and an international travel ban for an indicted sex trafficker vanishes.
But the political intervention didn't stop in Munich.
No, the broadcast cites a deeply concerning ProPublica report regarding a direct White House connection.
There is a lawyer named Paul Ingrassia currently working at the White House. Before taking this government role, Ingrassia actually worked for the Tate's legal campaign.
And not just any part of the campaign, he worked specifically on the litigation that was suing their victims in Florida.
According to the report, when the Tates landed in Florida, federal authorities in the U.S. seized their electronic devices.
Ingrassia allegedly chided those federal authorities and ordered the devices to be returned to the Tates.
Now, again, it must be stated clearly that Ingrassia vehemently denies intervening or giving any such orders.
However, the ProPublica report stands by its sourcing, noting they reviewed internal documentation and spoke to multiple individuals with direct knowledge of the event.
But whether it occurred through direct, explicit orders or implied pressure from a former associate now in the White House, the environment was clearly manipulated to protect the Tates' assets, their communications, and their mobility.
The system simply bent to accommodate them.
But here is the absolute tragedy of that geopolitical favor, the horrific, immediate consequence of lifting that travel ban.
Think about the timeline. The very first thing the Tates did when they got their passports back was a brand new allegation occurring on American soil, featuring the exact same horrific pattern of violence we discussed earlier.
And this alleged assault was made physically possible strictly because international political pressure allowed him to travel.
It is a devastating data point. It strips away all the political theorizing and highlights the real-world human cost of prioritizing political alliances and online influence over severe, documented criminal indictments.
A system designed to protect citizens was overridden to protect an influencer, and a citizen allegedly suffered the immediate consequences.
Which brings us to the precipice of where we are right now. The turning tide.
Because despite having the backing of arguably the most powerful political movement in the United States, despite the billionaires, the network anchors, the diplomatic interventions, and the White House connections, Andrew Tate is currently sitting in a Miami jail cell awaiting extradition to the UK.
The shield completely cracked. Why? After years of unshakable support, why did the system suddenly work?
The reporting indicates a massive, abrupt shift within the U.S. administration.
The U.S. State Department and the Department of Justice are now officially greenlighting the UK's extradition request.
They are allowing the machinery of international law to proceed unimpeded. Furthermore, briefings leaking out of the White House suggest that Donald Trump and Marco Rubio are decisively cutting the brothers loose.
The political cavalry is not coming to save them this time.
I just keep coming back to the timing. Why now? They defended him through the Romanian raid, through the initial indictments, through the massive public outcry.
Why did they suddenly abandon him when he finally made it to U.S. soil?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at the intersection of political optics and undeniable forensic evidence.
For years, the politicians and pundits defending Tate were likely operating on abstract concepts.
They were defending free speech or fighting the woke agenda, or most cynically, simply trying to harness his massive young male audience for votes.
They could maintain plausible deniability about the crimes by calling the Romanian justice system corrupt.
But an extradition request, based on 38 new charges from the UK Crown Prosecution Service, completely destroys that plausible deniability.
But it comes with a dossier of hard structural facts.
It is highly probable that once key figures within the administration actually had to review the physical, gruesome evidence, the medical documentation of Petequier, the audio recordings of machete threats, the sheer overwhelming volume of victims spanning a decade, it became politically radioactive.
So what does this all mean? It's a calculation of liability. It's one thing to defend a controversial podcaster who says offensive things on the internet.
It's an entirely different thing to use the power of the Oval Office to shield a man mathematically proven by forensic patterning to be a serial strangler.
The liability, finally, undeniably, outweighed the influence. He thought his online fame made him a geopolitical player, a kingmaker who was too big to jail.
But ultimately, hard forensic evidence and a 38-count UK indictment crushed his value as a political influencer.
Exactly. It is a brutal, inevitable collision between the manufactured reality of the internet, where you can buy followers, silence critics, and spin narratives, and the cold, hard, unyielding mechanics of the international justice system.
The internet cannot alter forensic pathology.
And that collision is exactly why we wanted to do this deep dive today, because this isn't just a true crime story about a bad guy finally getting caught.
That is way too simplistic. It is a massive, flashing, cautionary tale about information literacy, the attention economy, and the mechanics of power in the modern age.
It shows you, in real time, how bad actors can use the aesthetics of self-help and the language of political grievance as a smokescreen.
They use it to hide, to validate, and to literally finance an empire of abuse.
They make you think you're rebelling against the Matrix, while they are secretly building a prison for someone else.
And I want to leave you with one final, deeply unsettling thought that builds directly on the structural realities we've discussed today.
Andrew and Tristan Tate may be sitting in a Miami jail cell right now, their personal empire finally crumbling under the weight of forensic evidence.
But the digital infrastructure that profited from them, the ecosystem that allowed them to thrive for a decade, is completely intact.
The incentives have not changed. Platforms like Rumble prove that courting this kind of extremism can result in a 45% growth spike.
Algorithms on platforms like X are still mathematically tuned to reward and amplify extreme polarization and misogyny because it is the most efficient driver of engagement.
The millions of alienated, lonely young men that Tate radicalized the boys who bought the Trojan horse are still out there right now, staring at their screens, scrolling, feeling just as lost, looking for the next voice to tell them who to blame.
The architect of this specific empire might be gone, but the foundation remains flawless. So the provocative question for you to mull over is this. Now that this massive, highly lucrative vacuum has been created in the attention economy, who is the algorithm going to select to fill it next?
A truly chilling thought to leave on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back soon to unpack the next big story. Until then, keep questioning what you see in your feed.